Here's Donna.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Jesus Christ, it's 8 o'clock at night. That's how I feel. I've got so much energy, and it's 8:10. Wow, my name is Donna, and I am an alcoholic. My home group is No Serenity to Brooklyn. My sobriety date is August 5th, 2000, and that was the day that the obsession to drink was lifted. I have a service commitment in my home group. I'm one of the steering committee members. I have a sponsor. I have a new spiritual teacher, as a matter of fact, and I'm very excited to start work with her. It's interesting because the sponsor that I had, we were going through the big book, and life was just getting her life was getting very, very big. And she said, Donna, I don't have the bandwidth to continue to take you through the work. And I actually felt like I was breaking up with a lover. But I knew that I would be okay. And the one thing that she did say, she said, ask God to send you to a godly woman. And I understood what she meant. I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous in 2002. I was in a therapeutic community for 18 months and didn't learn anything about this disease. I really didn't recognize that God had removed the obsession to drink, because the thought of a drink had never occurred in the 18 months I was there, but I didn't think there was anything big in that. I just took it for granted. After going through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I knew that that was a miracle. And so I came to AA. I remembered listening to how it works. And I realized that they were showing us how to share what we were like, what happened, and what we're like today. And based on that, I was going to make a decision if I was willing to go to any length to get it. And they're not telling me what the it is, but I heard the it in someone that shared. I didn't hear the it in everybody, but I heard a woman share. She talked about what she was like. She shared what she was doing in AA. She just wasn't sitting around as a meeting maker. She was doing the deal. And I saw that there was something about her I didn't have yet. And so she came up to me and she said, Donna, are you willing to go to any length never to drink again? And I had been hearing, just don't drink for today. And I got to tell you, after sitting in a therapeutic community for 18 months, I was about to graduate. I was petrified because I was living my life like I was dying, to the point that I tried to commit suicide. But it's interesting because the day that I committed suicide, or tried to, it took another 10 years before I admitted defeat. And so when I left this therapeutic community, where I was going to begin my life was from a place of fucked. And that petrified me. So when she said, was I willing to go to any length never to drink again? I'm like, yes. See, because when I hear just don't drink for today, I think it's up to me to stay away from alcohol. And so I picked up the spiritual tools that were laid at my feet right away. I was directed to a woman and her husband who had a big book workshop in Harlem. They had met Joe Hawk, and they were taking us through the big book line by line. And for the first time, I realized what my problem was. See, I was 44 years old, living at home, and I didn't have a key to get into my mother's house because she did not trust me. The selfish and self-centered alcoholic that I was mad at her. So what was my life like? I always say that the biggest gift I got in recovery, and by my reliance upon God, is the ability to be. And even though B is only 2 letters of the alphabet, it took me a journey to get here. See, now the outside matches on the inside. See, I'm going to be 66 in a couple of months. 20 years ago, I could not stand if people looked at me, because I thought they were seeing everything I didn't like about me. All my life, who I was contingent upon what you thought about me. And because I didn't like who I was, I came from a family. My dad drank, my dad gambled. My mom is not a drinker, but she was a very angry wife and a very angry mother. I have a sister who was not like me. For whatever reason, the behavior of my dad and my mom didn't affect her. I have very vivid images of feeling left out. I have a vivid vision of walking into my home when I was a teenager and seeing my mom, my sister, and my dad, all three watching TV, and I felt left out. I realized that I don't know love, and that is a gift from God. I've always begged for it, grabbed for it, fighted for it. I did that at home, and I did that in relationships. So that's one of the things, one of the prayers I say, God, please show me how to receive love, and God, please show me how to give love. So I was never in the center of anything in my life like the way I am in the center of my program. I was always on the peripheral of life. See, because if I was in the center, that was bringing too much attention. I realized today that I had some childhood beliefs that carried over into my adult life. My self-esteem was shattered. I thought that I wasn't enough. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I didn't matter. And so I tried to make myself very small until I discovered liquor. And it wasn't like I was like looking to escape, like most teenagers, like somebody gets a bottle of Mad Dog 2020, Boone's Farm, and we take a drink. But for some reason, I don't know about everybody else, but it really made me feel good. I liked how it felt going down. I liked how it made me connect to you. See, the blessing today is that I could look at all of you and I could look you in the eye. I could never do that to people. And so life became grand. I am a native New Yorker. I grew up in the 70s. I remember my first club. Well, not my first club, but my first underground club was a place called the Gallery. It was an underground club. It was a club that catered to the gay lifestyle, and the music was unbelievably different than what I had been experienced in straight clubs. There were no tables, no chairs. The DJ was spinning. The lights were going. There were balloons on the floor. There was acid punch. I had arrived. See, my disease hid itself as a party for a very long time. See, there were a lot of people that got off the party. I couldn't get off the party. And so going to A-list parties started turning into going to dives. I know this is Alcoholics Anonymous, but there's a lot of drugs in my story. And see, it's interesting that my mind hid my alcohol problem from me, but it was willing to give up the drugs. I thought that my drug habit, I thought I was an addict. I remember when I went into the therapeutic community, they asked me how much I drank, and I told them I didn't drink a lot. And I realized today I have a mind that hid the truth about alcohol. It lied. It kept telling me that next time I'll drink different, to the point that I spent so much time trying to go. I mean, I was going to work with no sleep. I loved after hours. I was going on sprees. I would go out on Thursday knowing I had to pick up my check on Friday. I wouldn't stop drinking and drugging till Sunday. I actually missed Christmas sitting up in an after hours. That was my life for a very long time. I would wake up shaking, trying to figure out how I was going to get out of this jam. It was always, how do I get out of the jam? Who can I borrow money from? Well, I owe them, so I can't go there. So who else do I know that I can owe money to that has not heard my story or my lie? I became a very good liar, a very dramatic liar. I remember I had to go to work at 9 o'clock. I asked somebody what time it was. They said it was 10 to 9. I'm sitting in an after hours. I went outside in Manhattan. The traffic is going up and down the block. It is so loud. I'm in this payphone. I'm coming up with the lie. The lie I came up with was that I was at JFK taking my father's body to Panama. That's the kind of lies I gave. And once I gave the lie, and I know they didn't believe me, but once I fooled myself to believe they believed me, I went right back in the after hours. That went on endlessly. So I remember I was sitting in this crack den, and I grew up a Catholic. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 12th grade. And I didn't know anything about the Bible. I didn't know that it was about a relationship with God. I didn't understand any of that. I thought that God was a punishing God. And what confirmed that was when I got to page 10 in the big book, and when Ebby is sitting across from Bill, we don't know what Ebby is saying, but we know that Bill is sitting there for a very long time, and Bill is contemplating his recollection of religion and God. And I did the same thing when I got to page 10. What is my recollection of religion and God? And I realized that the image I had of God was very punishing, which made sense because everybody in my life punished. My parents punished, the teachers punished. If boyfriends didn't get what they want, they punished. Fast forward to work, if I don't do a good job, I get punishment in my review. I don't get the raise I think I need. So I think, okay, well, that's the way of the world. We punish each other. We make people feel bad if we don't get what we want from them. And so God fit in that same category. And I'm glad that I did that exercise, because after I finished 4 chapters of step 1, I knew that the concept I had of God was not going to get me past where I was at. So I'm sitting in this crack den, and all of a sudden the thought came to me, the only thing I have not tried to stay stopped was God. I distinctly remember saying that. And then I said, well, okay, well, I can't go to church because that seemed real foreign. Picking up the Bible seemed foreign. So I did absolutely nothing. I continued to drink. I continued to drink. I started to hit deeper emotional bottoms. I never say that I lost material things through my drinking, because I gave things away. I was purposefully not paying my rent. Back in the day, we would write checks. I would put a check in the mail and I wouldn't sign the check because that gave me more time for them to mail the check back for me to get the money together. I would go to the ATM machine. If there was $500, I took all that $500 out. It didn't come to mind that perhaps some of that money had to go towards bills. That's how I was living. So August 5th, 2000, man, that day was so hot. I had 50 cents in my pocket again, because I found myself with 50 cents in my pocket more than once. But this time I felt like I was walking down the block like this with my head down and my hands up. I wasn't really walking like that, but that's how I felt. The next thing I knew, a power burst upon me that I had never felt before. And in that moment, I knew I was done. Now, the beautiful thing is I know I had nothing to do with that obsession being lifted, because I felt the same way, because I was going out on 3-day runs. I probably felt the same way on August 3rd that I felt on August 4th, that I felt on August 5th, but August 5th was the day that God reached his hand and pulled me from the gates of death. I had nothing to do with that. I didn't manufacture that. I was able to look past my mom. She was sitting on that couch. That poor lady would sit on that couch and look to see what condition I was when I came in the door. And I looked at her and I told her I was done. I never said that. Now, those of you that have heard my story before, I never deviate, because this is my story. That's why I love Alcoholics Anonymous, because this is the first place I can come to and speak honestly and openly, because you get me and I get you. I was able to walk up those steps. How did I know to open up the phone book? I have never tried to stop drinking before. How did I know to look for a detox? How did I not pick up a drink or a drug for 3 days until a bed was ready? How did I get on that subway and not get off the subway to go cop at the Jamaica Projects? Now I'm sitting in there for 10 days. I don't know what I'm doing. AA speakers were in there, NA speakers were in there. You know, when I came into AA, I didn't know that MOCUS was a word, but I was MOCUS. I didn't hear. I did not hear the speakers. For whatever reason, I didn't hear them. But I was asked, Donna, are you willing to go to any length? When that 10-day was starting to come close, I was petrified because I didn't know what I was going to do. Going home seemed like it was too soon. So a woman said, Donna, are you willing to go to any length? And I said yes. So I went through a therapeutic community. I didn't even know what the hell that was. See, the more I tell my story, I see why I went, because it gave my mom a chance to rest. She knew where her daughter was for 18 months. Perhaps God did that for her. Perhaps me going to that therapeutic community so I can get job ready, because when I came out of that therapeutic community, I was making 9-step amends because I was going to that workshop while I was in that therapeutic community. I was spending my weekends every Saturday in the big book. So by the time I was leaving, I'm on 9-step amends. I get my first job. I realized, whoa, my checks are not, that money's not mine. That money is to pay back the universe. And that's exactly what I did. My first couple of paychecks, I paid back what I owed. A year later, I get a raise, and now I get a promotion. Now I'm making $20,000 more a year just because I paid back what I owed. I think that's maybe how it works. I'm not sure. I also knew that I knew how to be a worker amongst workers, because now I have an assistant and I'm no longer just piecemealing what a person should know so I can still be in control. I'm letting the person that works for me know everything they need to know about the project and telling them, you have permission to come up with any ideas you think might be better than mine. I could never do that. If I had an assistant, she couldn't be as cute as me and she couldn't be as smart as me, so I can have this false sense of being superior. See, I realized today, just like that they talk about that prosaic steel girder that's a massive electron swirling over. Well, that's what God does. God swirls through us, in us, among us. But see, I've got this mind that wants to make me feel separated from you so I can feel better than you. It's a liar. So I come to this work and I finally see for the first time what my problem is that I couldn't see from my mind, because I'm telling you, my mind hid the truth about alcohol. And then I get a chance to see that my mind lies to me about me. On a good day, my mind tells me, this is going to be too difficult for you to do. This ain't going to work out. You're not going to make enough money. And then I also have a mind that wants me to hold on to my belief and my disbelief about God. So if my mind lied to me about alcohol and my mind lied to me about me, perhaps my mind is lying to me about should I or should I not rely on this power greater than myself. I love the big book, because when I get to step 2, I don't even realize I'm in step 2, because when I get to re-agnostic, I'm still looking at me without God. And they're so loving to us. They're saying, yo, Donna, just lay aside prejudice. Because the beautiful thing about this is the same willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty I had when I came into AA is still all that I need. I don't have to make things happen. To me, I love when I don't know. Because if I don't know, I don't do, and I can sit. And if I can sit in some trust, and if I can sit in some gratitude, and if I can sit in some thankfulness, I really get to see that my life is really okay. But if I start living like I'm of the world, see, now I know the difference of being of the world and in the world. When I'm of the world, I start behaving in a way that makes me restless, irritable, and discontent. And see, the beautiful thing now is I understand why I was restless, irritable, and discontent. Because when we're in the light, I believe we're spiritual beings having human experiences. And when I start being manipulative or judgmental, it makes me feel uncomfortable, because I've been awakened today. I couldn't believe how asleep I was. I remember I did my first 5th step. I've had some powerful teachers. And I think because I was in this therapeutic community, I didn't have the opportunity to rely on human power, because I didn't have the luxury of making phone calls every day to somebody. All I had was that workshop on Saturday. So between Saturday to Saturday, what I was feeling in that workshop was sustaining me. I met other people in that workshop. So now I'm starting to build a fellowship that I crave. We would leave the workshop and stand on Lenox Avenue and 137th Street for another hour talking about what we read in the big book, all excited. So now my first year of AA, Fellowship of the Spirit, is meeting at St. John's every year. The first year, I hear Dave F. and Mark Houston, and I sat in the front row and I was like, damn, how did I get here? I cried because I knew God placed me with a teacher, not a preacher, a teacher. And she in turn opened up my spiritual life with all these great people that were teaching, that were not afraid to talk about God. I was seeing, are you willing to go to any length to get it? I was seeing a lot of it's. And damn, that's what I wanted. And so now I'm in New York City and I realize, well, there's a lot of middle of the road AA. We have to go to borough to borough to borough to find big book meetings. And when we went to middle of the road meetings, we had to have buddies with us, because when I would share and they would say, well, how much time do you have? And I only said 2 years. They would come behind me and try to cut my share down. And somebody said, Donna, it's not you. Sometimes when people are not doing this deal, they make themselves uncomfortable because they know that there's something that they're not doing in AA. And if we're carrying God's message, they made it hard for the carpenter. Why are they not going to make it hard for us? They say, don't talk to the newcomer about God. Well, damn it, in the forward to the second edition, it's saying wholesale miracles are taking place. I don't know about you, I'm not in the miracle producing business. They're not saying these guys quit drinking. The problem was relieved, the problem was removed, the problem disappeared. So I always say to people, go back to the last day and see where God was in that last day, because my mind will downplay August 5th, 2000. My mind will have a way of diminishing and making that day seem like any other day. And if I'm not convinced what God did on August 5th, 2000, my God is going to stay very small. I get to come to this program and all of a sudden I start thinking with possibility, what could my life be like if I was free? See, because there was always something missing. I never knew what it was. I remember I went back, I lived in South Bend, Indiana. I did a geographic move, Lord have mercy. I'm sitting in South Bend, Indiana. I went to a bar. I kid you not, that bar reminded me of a dive on the Lower East Side. I was like, ooh, I have arrived. I met my people. I knew every drug dealer in there when I left. All of a sudden, I'm with the same low lives I left New York. I slunk out of South Bend, Indiana. See, my drinking, at that point, all of a sudden now, all of my jobs have me around alcohol. I was a cocktail waitress at some after hours here in New York. I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work. There was an after hours on 20-something Street and Park Avenue. I'd get off from work and go right down to the Lower East Side and cop. That was my life. I had a lot of opportunities open up for me, but because of the physical craving, the mental obsession, and my low self-esteem interfered with any success I wanted in life. I was working at WQXR radio station. They said, Donna, we got a great job for you at the New York Times. I was very excited until they said, you got to take a drug test. At that point, I was so tired of me not being able to get where I want to be in life. I couldn't get past where I was at. So I got a big old bottle of cough medicine and I drank it. I didn't want to wake up. I wanted to die. So I'm living life like I'm dying to the point that I want to die. I come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm brought here. I'm brought here because God reached down and took me from the gates of death. As Dr. Silkworth says, the gates of hell. Bill said he thought that the devil had him in his grip. So I don't feel bad about saying the devil had me. So if God pulls me from that life, I didn't need to look for door number 3 when I got here. See, because the beautiful thing is that we walk in here hopeless and we get transformed into helpful. How does that happen if all we bring to the deal is willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty? How do I sit here and have a message that I hope is helping someone? How do I have purpose? So I'm going to meetings and I'm sharing and I'm getting these people that want me to take them through the work, and I was not even doing my 4th step amends yet. And I'm calling up Loretta. I'm like, Loretta, what am I going to do? These people want me to work with them. She said, if you are a page ahead, you work with them. And that's what I did. I was sitting in coffee shops. There was a coffee shop on 3rd Avenue and 18th Street, and that back table was always open for us. And I was reading the big book with men and women. It didn't matter to me. I've taken a lot of people through the work, but see, not when it says rarely have we seen a person fail, I have never seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed the path. See, some people stop at step 4 because their ego is too big for them to see where they're not the great big such a much as they think they are. And they don't want anybody else to know that. And then you get people that say, oh, I worked the 12 steps. What does that mean? This ain't an event, it's a process. You got to continue enlarging your spiritual life. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice, practice, practice. How do you get to God? You practice, practice, practice. I start my day in prayer and meditation. It's to the point now that unconsciously, God is with me throughout the day. Not 24 hours a day, because I'm human. See, I believe the evil one will still try to pull me from God. See, we get to be the light. To me, it all focuses on the 3rd step. Who's bearing witness to this powerful, magical thing that happens to us? Do they see God's power, God's love, and God's way of life in us? To me, I think that's what our role and responsibility is. Because there's a lot of people still of the world. Can we show them how to be in the world, but not of it? So one of the things that I do when I'm around people, God, please show me how to receive love. Because I can have this exterior that I don't want people to get close, because if they get close, I don't know what to do with it. Show me how to receive love and show me how to love so that my mind opens up, my heart opens up. So I did a bit of inventory recently, resentment. And this was pretty powerful because I did 4 and 5 at the same time. So as I was seeing my defects in real time, so was my sponsor. That was a new experience for me. And as I'm doing the work, I'm mumbling, I don't want to work with her, because I was feeling real uncomfortable. And I realized that there was some stuff about my mom that I really had not come to peace with. And I realized that there was some behaviors in my mom that when I'm around people or women that display any of those same characteristics or behaviors, the tinge of an old idea crops up and I start feeling less than. Feelings of not good enough, feeling less than, feeling that I'm not enough. And so there was a woman that was on my list, and it was so powerful. I was seeing how she was showing up, but God let me see her from a different perspective. And see, I think that's what happens here. God lets us see ourselves and other people from his perspective, from a perspective of love. See, I have a tendency all my life to see you in one way. And then I take how I see you in one way and I put you in a frame and I hang it on the wall, and that's the only way that I see you. But I do this work and I get to see that perhaps you're just as broken as I am. I get a chance to see that there's a lot of transferable dysfunction from family to family. And how grateful I am that I get to see things differently, that I have the opportunity to see people from a place of being just as broken, and they're doing the best that they can. And perhaps the reason why they're so hard on the outside is because they're masking how they feel on the inside. So I saw this about this woman and I realized, wow, she's a lot like me. But unlike me, I'm doing some deep work to see the truth in that lie. And then the next couple of weeks, all of a sudden, I'm around a lot of women that are strong, um, accomplished, and I don't feel any difference. And I'm grateful that God put me in these women's lives, because all my life I thought that I was less than, and I realized, wow, I'm no different from them. They're no different from me. And I had an opportunity to interact with one woman on Zoom. And when she got on Zoom, I was so impressed with her surroundings that I started to feel a tinge of that jealousy and envy. And so what I did, because I know what it cost me if I allow that to play out, it cost me emotionally, it cost me to feel less than, and it cost me materialistically. I hold myself back from any success I want in life. So when I felt the tinge of that old idea, I just prayed, and I started to pray and ask God to continue to bless her, continue to give her all that she desires. And as I did that, I was able to stay present with her. I was able to appreciate what she had instead of feeling envious of what I feel I don't have. It was the most amazing, amazing process. I'm very grateful for that. I also had a woman that had called me up, and she was having some old beliefs about her parent and needing her parent to pay for what her parent didn't give her. Now, see, I'm not smart enough to come up with this analogy. See, God works in and through us every time we allow it. I said, you know what? So often we want people to pay for what they did. I said, it's just like some kids are outside playing baseball and they break my window. Well, I don't go outside and ask the child to pay for the window because the child can't pay. I go to the child's parent. So maybe I can do the same thing with people who I feel owe me. Maybe I can go to God and ask God to pay that debt so I can release them and I can be free. And perhaps by having God pay the debt, I can show up and be the one to express love. Maybe that's my responsibility. Maybe the people that who've hurt me, maybe the people who still seem a certain way, maybe it's my responsibility to demonstrate what love is. This kind of thinking is not from me. I think it's such an honor to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and be on the other side of insanity, because we are uniquely qualified to help a segment of the population nobody else gets. We can wake up with purpose. I don't know how much time I have, because I'm going to keep on speaking, Phil, until you give me the heads up, all right? I am very grateful for Zoom. This was interesting. Right before the pandemic, I had been going to like 1 or 2 meetings a week. My spiritual life has not always been a straight line. I was in a relationship. I got into a relationship 7 years in AA and realized that I knew nothing about being in relationships. And I ran into the love of my life that has been the love of my life since I was 18 years old. And I didn't consult my ideals. I think part of it was because I didn't know whether God was going to tell me I should be with this man or not. And I got real sick, real sick. I was obsessing over him. I was manipulating. Oh my God, the behavior was so off the wall that I knew that I had to find an Al-Anon woman. And I remember I called up a friend in AA who's going to be speaking here next week. And I said, I need a black belt in AA. And he directed me to these women in Al-Anon. And I went through the big book with an Al-Anon. She wasn't an alcoholic. And I always say that I was given the gift of willingness because I was living in Harlem at the time and she lived in Staten Island. And willingness to go to any length meant me jumping on 2 subways and a ferry. And I remember we were going through step 1, and all of a sudden the focus was off him, and I started to see me in a way that I had never seen myself before. I started to see what it's like to live with me. And my heart started to soften towards this person. The same way that the obsession to drink was lifted, the obsession to obsess over this man was lifted. And I remember when I was finally able to let go and I went over to where he worked, I realized on a very deep level, I conceded to my innermost self that this man did not have the capacity to be as honest as I wanted him to be. I was able to see him where he was at because I never realized that when we're around people that are sick, like us, I know this man loved me. I know this man wanted to treat me better than he was. All I was doing was reminding him of his shortcomings every day. And I realized how hurtful that is. How to remind a man that he's not being as much of a man as he wants to be. So every time I see people from God's perspective, it crushes my big, fat ego just a little more. I don't walk around thinking I'm the great big Willy Bobo that I think I am. I'm just like you guys, doing the best that I can. But I also got a lot of gratitude because I picked up these spiritual tools that will, and the beautiful thing is they're laid at our feet, man. Once we come in, we don't have to look for door number 3. They're laid at my feet, but see, there's a lot of humility because I got to bend down and pick the tools up. The humility is bending down. But the beautiful thing is at that point, I pick them up and I go through this work and I get to lay all problems and all things, I lay them back down at the feet of my Father. Because we rise above our problems. I remember Rashid used to tell people when they used to complain to him, he's like, what are you doing way down there? What are you doing way down on the problem? Bill Wilson tells us very, very distinctly on page 1314, the power handles all problems, manages all our affairs. There's only 2 things that we do: rely on God and work on behalf of God. That's all that's required. I don't believe God saves us from the gates of hell to be miserable. So the God that creates me recreates me, but am I willing to do the work to see what I did in the middle to block me off from you, to block me off from God, to feel so isolated in a world that there's other spirits here with me? You know, whenever I get to the forward in the big book, it says we of Alcoholics Anonymous. That word we, that at least that W seems so freaking big because it represents relationships. I was so isolated. I remember when Rashid, I did my fit set with Rashid, and it's really humbling when you do a fit set with a person of the opposite sex and you're willing to tell all. I remember Rashid said, did you tell everything? And I kid you not, it felt like my ego was holding onto my leg. Like if you have children, you go to leave the house and the child holds onto your leg and says, don't go, don't go, don't go. I felt like my ego wanted me to hold on to this thing that I was going to take to the grave. But I knew on the other side of sharing that was freedom. And I literally felt like I wrestled away from my ego and I shared it. And so then Rashid let me look at because he was making a list of all my objectionable behavior. And then he says, Donna, let's make a list of some of the things that are some good quality. Now that list wasn't very long and he had to help me write it because I couldn't see anything good about me. But the one thing I did realize that what was on this list was the qualities that I now have added to how I'm living in the spirit. And I saw the list of character defects and I looked at both lists and I said, this is what God's intention was for me, not what I became. And my head dropped to the table and I wept. I've never wept before. It's like I wept asking for forgiveness. And when I was done weeping, I remember saying, I had no idea. I don't even know what I meant when I said I had no idea. Rashid said the most profound thing to me when he let me out to go sit for my hour. He said, now go join the human race. How profound is that? So I come to AA and it says, we. And I realize, wow, I'm not alone. It's the beginning of healthy relationships. I have the first one with me. I'm no longer poisoning my body. I can come in here and have a healthy relationship with God so I can have a healthy relationship with you all. And then along the way, we get to help some nifty people. We get to build a fellowship that we crave, especially with Zoom. Now I've got places to go, people to meet. I met my new sponsor, lives in Lafayette, Louisiana. This woman is amazing. Amazing. See, I wasn't worried when my last teacher said that she couldn't work with me because I knew I wasn't going to drink. And I just was patient and I waited for a godly woman. And I just love working with her. And I know that I'm just going to have a deeper and deeper experience with God and with myself and all of you. Phil, is it time for me to, what am I done at 5:55? You know, I couldn't have dreamed of this life. I always say that my runway in life is getting shorter and shorter. And so there's a lot of uncertainty I've got going on. I wanna leave New York. I'm thinking of being an expat somewhere in Central America. I don't know what that's gonna look like. And I'm not worried. I just know as long as I keep God in the center of my life, still think about how I can be of service. It's like I think of myself less because I think of myself more than I ever have. I realize that the God of my understanding loves me a lot. And peace, joy, happiness, and love, those are gifts. My mind, I love the way Bill Wilson calls ego, the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow we shiver. There's no compassion that comes from my ego. No understanding, no patience. And in whose shadow I shiver, no wonder I never felt comforted. You know, I did a workshop with Tyler, and I love how she instructed us to do step 7. Be on one side of the doorway. And as we say, step 7, walk through the doorway into a new life. How powerful that was. You know, in the big book, you know, there's a whole bunch of promises. I tell the people that I work with to circle, underline, or highlight every time you see the word new. New outlook, new foundation, new reaction. And so many of us want to hold on to the same old okey doke. Why? And the thing is, I want this new, but I don't know the new. I don't know a new life that God has for me. Am I willing to go to any length? And the thing that's so beautiful is that willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty. If that's all I bring, God's grace meets that. And God does what God does in and through me in spite of me. Because I tell you, I am not the same person I was when I came in here almost 23 years ago. But I always say I was given the gift of willingness and I allowed God to lead me. I would not have met my spiritual teachers. I would have not met spiritual people on this path if it was left up to me. I feel very blessed My story isn't sitting in AA sick. I work with a lot of people whose story is they've sat in AA sick. And to me, maybe it's like just reaching another bottom sober so that God has to get our attention. We got to be misery, despair, and sinking in quicksand. I woke up many mornings for many years, miserable and full of despair. And it wasn't until the quicksand was underneath my nose did I say, okay, there's nothing else to try. Who lives like that? No sufficient reason. I wait until, like Fred says, well, I haven't lost everything. Why is our threshold so low? And another part of the book, it tells us about all the things that are happening. And it says, as matters grew worse. You mean to tell me they get worse than that? All the while, they say that this phenomenon parallels our sound reasoning, that the insane idea went out every time. What is going on in my mind that there's something else paralleling what is this thing? So if I'm sitting in AA and I see step one, I'm powerless over alcohol, my life is unmanageable, my mind will make step one seem like it ain't no big deal. It ain't going to be enough for me to do step two just on reading step one. But if I go through 4 chapters of step one, the last paragraph or more about alcoholism says, once again, like if you don't realize it by now, you have no mental defense. See, we need something that has depth and weight because this thing lies. It's 8:57. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me on a Saturday night. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to share, because sometimes I don't know what the hell comes out of my mouth, but I know it's got me revved up. Thank you.